Good evening, this is Viewpoint. I'm Zaka Jacob. Rahul Gandhi has been forced to say publicly at a meeting in Jalandhar yesterday that very soon he will be naming a chief ministerial face for Punjab. He's been caught between Navjot Singh Sidhu and Channi. Rahul really faces a Hobson's choice. He cannot afford to alienate either of these two big names. One, the sitting chief minister, the other, the Pradesh Congress president, after the exit, of course, of the former heavyweight chief minister, Captain Amarinder Singh. The question is, who will Rahul Gandhi pick? And more importantly, what forced his hand to publicly commit that they will announce a chief ministerial face before Punjab goes to polls?
Rahul Gandhi is caught between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand is Sidhu-Channi, a popular Dalit Sikh face with mass connect. On the other hand is Navjot Singh Sidhu, the blue-eyed boy of the Gandhis. It's one of these men that Rahul Gandhi will need to pick to be the face of Congress's campaign in Punjab. An announcement that he claims he will make soon after consulting party workers.
कांग्रेस पार्टी चाहती है और कांग्रेस पार्टी का कार्यकर्ता चाहता है और पंजाब चाहता है, तो फिर हम चीफ मिनिस्टर का निर्णय आपके लिए ले लेंगे। कैसे लेंगे? अपने कार्यकर्ताओं से पूछकर, और जो सही व्यक्ति होगा वो पंजाब को आगे ले जाएगा।
मैं भी जब जवान था छक्का मारता तो बॉल बाउंड्री पार।
For months now, Punjab Congress has been plagued by infighting, largely centering around Sidhu. It started with the friction between Sidhu and former Chief Minister Captain Amarinder Singh. When Captain exited the party and Sidhu-Channi took charge, he became the object of Sidhu's ire. Yet when Rahul Gandhi came to Punjab on Thursday, both leaders appeared to put up a united front.
ये कोई लड़ाई है, कुर्बानी देवांगा, हर हाल दे विच पंजाब दे लोकां दे बेहतरी वास्ते एक अच्छी सरकार देने वास्ते मूरे खड़ांगा, कांग्रेस पार्टी दे नाल चलांगा। राहुल गांधी जी, तुसी मैनू जो देता इस तो ज्यादा मैं क्या मांग सकदा है?
In the last Punjab Assembly elections, Congress had broken from tradition and named a CM candidate. At that time, though, there was really just one face, Amarinder Singh, and he was seen to have forced the leadership's hand. This time, with two contenders, the consequences will be very real. One possible formula is making Sidhu the CM face and Channi the party head. But dropping Channi could hurt the Congress with Dalit voters.
ओ तोपां गोले बंब जिस तरह को साडा फॉर्मर मुख्य मंत्री कठपुतली बन के सेंटर दियां उन्हां दे विच नचदा है, ਇਹ नहीं चाहता। शहर अमन मान चाहता साहब, शहर एक सॉलिड सेकुलर सरकार चाहता है।
Rahul Gandhi's turnaround over the Chief Minister face is a clear hint that the party needs to present a united front. But is the damage already done to Congress's chances in Punjab?
All right, joining us on the talking point, Dr. Sarwan Singh Channi, spokesperson of the BJP, Dr. Sunny Ahluwalia, spokesperson of the Aam Aadmi Party, Aaron Mirza, spokesperson of the Congress Party, and Hemant Attri, senior journalist, joining us. Aaron Mirza, I'll start with you. Two things. What is it that forced Mr. Rahul Gandhi to announce publicly that they will name a chief ministerial face? And two, are we to then believe that the Congress Party doesn't have confidence in the sitting chief minister? Usually, when a party goes into an election with the sitting chief minister, the election is fought in that person's name and face.
All right. Thank you very much, Zaka. I think I'll start with your first question. You said what has forced Rahul Gandhi ji. In fact, let me make it very clear that nothing has forced Rahul Gandhi ji, because if you listen to his speech extensively, a part of which you played, but not the entirety, he very clearly says that a discussion ensued between him, Sidhu-Channi ji, and Navjot Singh Sidhu Saab, even before they reached the venue. And it was at that point in time that he took the decision, which he publicly announced on stage, for the sake of the party workers, and for Punjab, because that is what Punjab wants. So I don't see how this tantamounts to anyone forcing anyone's hand, because at the end of the day, when you go to the people of Punjab and you seek votes from them, you need to adhere to what they want. And that is exactly what the Congress party is doing in this case.
Okay, what about my second question? Yeah.
The second question, yes, exactly. Now, the second question that you asked me is quite interesting because ideally, and in most circumstances, you are right. When an incumbent sitting chief minister fights the elections, it is usually the incumbent chief minister who ends up leading the party. But that is when this incumbent chief minister has had the entire mandate and worked for the 5 years. That is not the case when you look at Punjab.
Okay.
When you look at Punjab, in the previous elections, it was under Captain Amrinder Singh's name that the party fought the elections. The last 111 days was where Charanjit Singh Channi ji came to power, and he has done tremendous work.
Okay.
Now, that is exactly why the party is going to take a decision based on the inputs of the party workers as to who the chief ministerial face of the party would be. And Rahul Gandhi ji very clearly said that this is an exception to the general
this
norm.
This has put the Congress and Mr. Gandhi in an unenviable position because Hemant Attri, the fact is two things. One, I don't know how easy or difficult it will be to, you have a sitting Dalit chief minister. How easy or difficult it would be to name somebody else in his place as the chief ministerial face going into election number one. What may that mean for the Congress's chances, particularly with the Dalit Sikh vote bank? And secondly, more importantly, Navjot Singh Sidhu, everybody knows, is a bit of a voluble character. I mean, even Rahul Gandhi can't second guess what Mr. Sidhu is going to say tomorrow. So is the Congress party going to put all its eggs in a basket that's so volatile? Hemant Attri.
Zaka, yesterday whatever happened, it is a classic and glaring case of arm twisting. Somebody may agree with me or not, but Congress had very solid plans not to declare any chief ministers before yesterday. What happened during their journey from airport to the venue was very clear. Both Channi and Navjot Singh Sidhu have very, very high stakes. And if you go by whatever happened on the stage, see that tone and toner of Mr. Navjot Singh Sidhu, his audacity, his arrogance. What he said, "Mujhe darshani ghoda mat bana dena." He is in a way warning Rahul Gandhi, or for that matter, all the audience there, all the leaders there.
Okay.
And see the humility with which the sitting chief minister, Mr. Channi, said, "You have given me enough. I can't seek for more." So to that extent, Rajaka, you are perfectly right by saying that it is more than impossible for Congress party to take any other call except for Mr. Channi. I am convinced about it.
Okay, we'll see how that plays out because if they were to go with the sitting chief minister, frankly, and that's why I asked the question, what forced Rahul Gandhi's hand? What forced him to commit this publicly? Because there was no need to actually say that. And the Congress party's history, if you look at it, yes, they have made some exceptions, but broadly, they've never named the chief ministerial face going into an election. But let me also bring in Dr. Channi as well as Dr. Ahluwalia into this conversation. Dr. Ahluwalia, one thing is very clear, that your chief ministerial face, Bhagwant Mann, and of course Mr. Channi, the incumbent chief minister, both are coming from Malwa. And Malwa is frankly going to decide, if you ask me, who the next chief minister is going to be, simply by virtue of the fact that 70 out of the 117 seats are in that region. If it's not Mr. Channi, if it's Mr. Sidhu, does that give your party and your chief ministerial face a big leg up in the biggest region in Punjab?
See, I will like to say that in case it is either Navjot Singh Sidhu or it is Charanjit Singh Channi, it is hardly going to have any impact on Aam Aadmi Party. Why? There's a reason behind it. Everybody knows what kind of a person Navjot Singh Sidhu is. Even on the stage, he clearly mentioned, as said by others also, that "Mujhe dekhne wala ghoda na bana dena." That means he is very sure that I will be the chief minister face. He's very sure. At the other side, the Dr. Channi, the chief minister, the present chief minister of the Congress, he was like there's a relation between the master and the slave. He said to the Rahul Gandhi that you have already given me so much. So he want to be like Gandhis are always, even in the time of Indira Gandhi or Jawaharlal Nehru, the people of Punjab or people of other state were like slaves to them. And they always used to, bow their heads. And every time the standard of the chief minister, if you look at how he was saying his speech, he was always, just bending his hand that you have already given me so much, like this and that. So he was like begging. So both the chief minister candidate, if they are both the chief minister candidate, nothing is going to change Aam Aadmi Party. But yes, one thing is very clear. In case it is Charanjit Singh Channi, Navjot Singh Sidhu is going to, be out, sir. And in case if it is Navjot Singh Sidhu, then Channi will have a bigger problem. This is what we are thinking right now, and maybe there can be some other changes also.
On the other side, Navjot Singh Sidhu, and the reason, one second, the reason why the Congress Party may be interested, or Rahul Gandhi may be inclined to naming Navjot Singh Sidhu, other than of course what seemed like an open threat on stage, is also the fact that Mr. Sidhu comes from Amritsar, and Amritsar is the heart of Sikh politics. It's the heart of Panthic politics, as it were, in Punjab for a number of decades now. That's where the Golden Temple is. That's the holiest of holiest shrines for the Sikhs. And this time around, Amritsar East has become a high-profile contest with Navjot Singh Sidhu versus Bikram Majithia. So if Mr. Sidhu were to emerge victorious there, Dr. Sarwan Channi, then clearly all the issues that he has espoused over the last 5 years, whether it's the drug problem, whether it's the sacrilege cases, whether it is going easy on Majithia, all of that culminates in this battle for Amritsar East. And there is no way that if Mr. Sidhu were to win Amritsar East, were to defeat Bikram Singh Majithia, then there is no way Rahul Gandhi or anyone will be able to stop his claim from becoming the next chief minister. Sarwan Channi.
Yeah, Kaji, I think I should, my opinion is that the issues of Punjab are far, far bigger and far more important than a fight between Mr. Majithia and Mr. Navjot Sidhu. People are not concerned who wins, who loses, but a highly debt-ridden state with 4 lakh rupees, 4 lakh crore of rupees debt, and another 1 lakh plus Kasani debt, I think, and the way the state resources have been looted, plundered, and the whole infrastructure is crumbling. I think people are more concerned with the real issues, especially for the elevation
Dr.
of poverty.
Don't you agree that sacrilege is a big issue? It still has not been resolved. The whole drug issue is still a very relevant issue. It's a very live issue. And of course, corruption, as Mr. Sidhu puts it, the corruption of the Akalis, corruption of Majithia. Don't you think all of it is culminating in this fight for Amritsar East?
You're asking me?
Yes, Dr. Sarwan Channi, yes. Yes, Dr. Sarwan Channi, yeah, I'm asking you, yes.
Yeah. I must say that earlier, when this, we call it sacrilege, that thing happened.
Yeah.
It was, Kalidal BJP government, and they did nothing, and issue was not far bigger to be resolved. And then thereafter, subsequently the killing at village Bablakala, and then Lathicharge and other thing at Kotpura. But they were not of the opinion, they were not willing to resolve this issue. That's why it lingered out. And thereafter, hands in gloves, both the Congress and the Akalis, they did nothing on that issue. Then, the promise, again, the Congress people are now making their claim of 111 days. And I must ask my friend Mirzaji, that did Mr. Channi contested election for 111 days? Or it was a mandate given to the Congress for whose, the election manifesto was released by Rahul Gandhi, and the promises were made of the waiving of the farmers' loans,
etc.
Ghar Ghar Naukri and
all right. I'll give Aaron Mirza a chance to respond, but first I want to explain this dilemma that the Congress leader Mr. Gandhi finds himself in now that he's publicly committed that there will be a chief ministerial face that will be named. It's essentially the divide between the two big regions. One, of course, is Malwa, which has the highest number of seats as far as Punjab is concerned. Let's just run you through Malwa. In fact, if you look at Malwa, all the chief ministers over the last 20, 30 years have come from this region. 69 seats, out of which in 2012 the Congress party won 40 seats. It's also the seat of the the current Chief Minister, Mr. Charanjit Singh Channi, he's won last time from Chamkaur Saab by a 12,000 margin. It's also the seat of the previous Chief Minister, Captain Amrinder Singh. In fact, if you go all the way back to the early 90s, if you want to find a non-Malwa Chief Minister of Punjab, you have to go all the way back to the 90s when Byan Singh was the Chief Minister, and he was, of course, from Jalandhar, which is in the Doaba belt, in the northern belt. But Malwa has really controlled the politics, at least as far as Chief Minister is concerned, controlled the politics of Punjab for the last 20 to 30 years. Prakash Singh Badal is from Lambi, that's in Muktsar. Again, that's in the Malwa region. Captain Amrinder Singh from Patiala, again in the Malwa region. And now, like I said, both the current Chief Minister, he's from Chamkaur Saab, and Bhagwant Mann, who is fighting from Dhuri in Sangrur, both of them from the Malwa region. So just in terms of the sheer weight of seats, yes, Malwa is absolutely critical, and that's why all chief ministers all the way to the 90s, if you go back in Punjab, have been from the Malwa region. But what is interesting is, if you look at the Majha region, much fewer seats. It's only about 20-odd seats, 25 seats. That's a far cry from the 70, almost 70 seats that Malwa has. But here's where the interesting thing is. Majha has always been the heart of Sikh politics in Punjab. This is Amritsar. This is where the Golden Temple is. And Amritsar East, of course, is where the big fight is. And I'm going to just highlight Amritsar East for our viewers here. Go back and check the 2012 election. This is Amritsar East. Navjot Kaur Sidhu, Mr. Navjot Singh Sidhu's wife, had won that constituency by the barest of margins in 2012. Of course, both of them were in the BJP at that time. Amritsar North at that time was won by Anil Joshi of the BJP, and Amritsar East was won by Navjot Kaur Sidhu. And then 2017, when Mr. Navjot Singh Sidhu, he joined the Congress, he won with a margin of 42,000 votes. So Amritsar East is going to be the big fight between Bikram Majithia and, of course, Navjot Singh Sidhu. But Majha is absolutely essential for the Congress party because a bulk of its Jat Sikh leaders, whether it is Sukhi Randhawa, he comes from this region. Deputy Chief Minister O.P. Soni is also Deputy Chief Minister, comes from this particular region. Pratap Singh Bajwa comes from this region as well. So in the current cabinet, at least 7 to 8 big names are from the Majha region. Even though it has far fewer seats, just 25 compared to the 69 in Malwa, the reason why Majha is important is because it is the heart and soul of Sikh politics as far as Punjab is concerned. So on that question, let me go back to Aaron Mirza and ask him, it's similar to what I asked Dr. Channi a moment ago. I think whatever issues Mr. Sidhu has been raising over the last many years, whether it's the sacrilege issue, whether it is the drugs issue, whether it's the corruption issue exemplified, according to him, in Bikram Majithia, all of that fructifies and comes to a head in this battle for Amritsar East. How can you deny him Chief Minister if he goes on to win that big clash like many are expecting him to?
Zaka, I just hope that you give me a couple of minutes because there's a lot that I need to speak about in context of what your other esteemed panelists have spoken about. But let me first just get to your question. I don't think that it is a hot seat, a hot contest or whatever. Because if Mr. Majithia was so sure that he can give a tough fight and that he can win from Amritsar East, which I don't think he will even, in his dreams probably, he should have been contesting only from Amritsar East. The very fact that he's contesting from 2 seats in this particular context is a reflection of the very fact that this is nothing but a publicity.
No, but he's free to contest from 2 seats. There's nothing that stops him.
No,
The Election Commission doesn't stop you from contesting in 2 seats.
I did not say even for a second that the ECI does not permit it. I'm not talking about legality here. I'm talking about morality versus optics. If you're so sure that you're going to win from a seat and you can give a run for the money for Navjot Singh Sidhu Saab, then why do you need to contest from a so-called safe seat of yours, Majithia? It's very simple. So for anyone who's trying to create a perception or the optics that this is a hotly contested seat, you're playing right into the playbook of the Akali Dal and Majithia because this is all about optics for them because they know that Majithia might even lose his deposit in Amritsar East because of the kind of work both Navjot Singh Sidhu Saab and Navjot Kaur Sidhu
I think we're mixing issues. I don't think anybody is playing to anybody's game. The fact is, that this is a big clash. I mean, the media will
I don't think so.
will play.
I
No,
don't think
of
so.
course
That's
it is
exactly
a big
what I'm
clash. You
saying.
may not think so, but Hemant Attri surely thinks that Mr. Bikram Majithia versus Navjot Sidhu is the clash of this Punjab election.
And everyone,
Hemant
Zaka,
Attri.
just like how...
Hemant Attri, is it or is it not? Or are we just making this to be, like bigger than it is? Hemant.
Zaka, if you go by professional terms, let me say something which is a bit irrelevant as far as your question is concerned. See, a lot will depend on how Congress party declares its chief minister. Suppose Mr. Navjot Singh Sidhu is declared, which is highly unlikely, then there will be a titans clash in Amritsar East.
Okay.
But if he is not, suppose he is not declared as the chief minister candidate, this fight will be run for money. That is point number one. Number two,
Hemant, is it possible? I'm asking you a hypothetical question, but in Amritsar, which is a city seat, there's a good proportion of Hindu votes there as well. The BJP is always, in fact, let's not forget, Mr. Sidhu used to win from this seat for the longest time as a BJP candidate. Is it possible, and we've seen this in the past in Punjab, is it possible that there could be a ganging up of the Akali vote, the BJP vote, and some of the Hindu vote, because all of them are aligned to defeating Mr. Sidhu in Amritsar East?
No, exactly, but Zaka, that's what I'm saying. Suppose, my question is somewhat, replying something else. If Mr. Navjot Singh Sidhu is declared as chief minister, then it is a foregone conclusion he will win hands down. There is no problem.
Okay.
If at all he is not announced as the chief minister candidate, he will be restricted to Amritsar East. Instead of, campaigning for the party in the whole of Punjab state, he will be restricted, and that's what the game plan is.
Okay.
Akalis would never like him to get out of Amritsar East.
Correct.
So the real issue will be, there are two things, Zaka, just give me 1 minute. One is how the Congress party, whom they declare as the chief minister.
Yep.
Suppose they declare Charanjit Chinni. It's a hypothetical thing again. What Mr. Navjot Singh Sidhu will do, you and me cannot even predict, even the Congress cannot predict. He is such a, immediately the way he reacts.
Okay.
And what way he reacts, he might say, I'm not going to contest.
No,
Yesterday
so
only he said
I
that
think
Darshini
I
Gopal
think the
Panda.
choice between Mr. Channi and Mr. Sidhu is very clear. One is about the heart and soul of Panthic Sikh politics in Punjab, and I want to ask Dr. Ahluwalia this, and the other is about the crude real politic, the number of seats, particularly, of course, when it comes down to not just the fact that Malwa has 69 seats, but also a lot of the backward votes, the Dalit Sikh votes, the Dera votes all happen in Malwa. The question, though, is this is a Hobson's choice for the Congress party. Do they choose the heart and soul, or do they choose real politic?
I would like to add 2-3 things in this debate as well. When we are talking about Amritsar seat, every channel is asking the same question, that it has become the hottest seat. There will be a lot of competition. But when we think what these leaders are thinking, I am sure that Navjot Singh Sidhu will lose from Amritsar this time. Why? Because he's always saying, see this Lambu, and Lambu is saying, this is Tali, Bajao Tali, Thoko Tali. So these are not the issues of Punjab people. Issues of Punjab, what Jeevan Jyot is saying, that we want to make good schools, we want to make good hospitals. This is what people in Amritsar, even today, there was one survey done in that particular seat, and people said that we want to vote for a change, and we want to vote for Arvind Kejriwal. So there are other issues as well. It is just a fight between two families, Navjot Singh Sidhu and Bikram Singh Majithia, and they're always.
I don't know.
We've
seen instances where emotional issues, and let's be very, very clear, the sacrilege issue is a very emotional issue. The drugs issue is a very, very raw and emotive issue in Punjab, and all of these, according to me at least, are coming to a sort of a complete collision, as it were, and it's best exemplified in this fight in Amritsar East. But like I said, something happened in that car journey which made Mr. Rahul Gandhi publicly commit to naming a chief minister, and like I said at the top of the show, it's a Hobson's choice for him. How can he not name a sitting Dalit chief minister? Because if he doesn't name him, what might that mean for the large Malwa region, the Dera vote, the backward vote? Will the Congress party risk that? Or B, if he doesn't name Mr. Sidhu, as Hemant said, no one quite knows what Mr. Sidhu's next move would be, because he's so unpredictable. Anyway, we leave it at that. It's going to be a fascinating contest, this, not just in Amritsar East, but in the 116 other constituencies in Punjab. And it's going to be fascinating because of the personalities, it's going to be fascinating because of the politics, and it's going to be absolutely fascinating because of the issues that are at stake in deciding Punjab's future. Thanks for tuning in.